formerly of the Nova Scotia Home for Colored Children. He was involved with the efforts to address those wrongs over the years. We'll talk about an education program. That's coming up in a few moments. Hour of openness there at 2. But right now, sounds of the season and a reason for us to get Ed McHugh on the line. Hi, Ed.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. How you doing?
Oh, man, it was cold this morning. Chilly.
Yes, it was. I was up bright and early driving my dear spouse to the airport. So.
I will say it was close enough to freeze my BA, but that won't mean anything to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Ed McHugh, there's this petition that's been circulating. It's the time of the year that we talk about shopping in stores.
Absolutely.
There's an ask saying that the government needs to step in and legislate the stores closed Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Make of that?
I've read the correspondence behind it. Anyway, I think from a communications point of view, there's some some additional arguments added to the letter that don't need to be there. I think that the letter just needs to come right to the point and say that, it would be a good idea to just do the human thing here and to close the stores at 4 o'clock. Unfortunately, the communication gets into the climate change and the war effort, and so it needs to. I just think it needs to focus. It's sharpen its focus a little bit, and I don't think it's an outlandish request at all. I actually every year around Christmas time I feel sorry for those who work in retail. It's a very natural feeling to many people to, by 4 o'clock on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve that, to pack it in, go home, and it's an evening you can enjoy with family and friends, and so. I can see it. And, there's a great phrase that a professor said to me once years ago in class, and he said, if not for deadlines, nothing would get done. So I think I don't think the deadline would hurt many people. I just think people would work towards the deadline, understanding that everything's going to close by 4 o'clock. And I think people would just adjust. And those people who work hard in the retail sector, and a number of them do, could go home early.
Ed McHugh is here. He's with the business faculty at NSCC. He's on the line this afternoon. We're talking about this petition that's being circulated. Just for transparency, Tony Lowness has been talking about this for years. In fact, the blog is called Save Our Sundays. He's very much been against Sunday shopping, and he brings this argument that the politicians don't have to work on weekends and evenings or holidays, so perhaps maybe they're not as open to having this conversation.
Yeah, and unfortunately, for businesses like retail, like restaurants, etc., they're built. A lot of them have to be built for what I'd call the off hours. They have to be open in the evenings. They have to be open on weekends because that's when they can make most of their business. And to the vast majority of people who work that the 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever Monday to Friday, those businesses have to meet those time requirements. In order to stay in business. But, I do think when it comes to these 2 days, I see nothing wrong with it, actually.
And this man, Tony Lowness, says, I spoke with, and this would have been his MLA, he happens to be mine as well, Mark Furey. He said the response he got was, well, this is a corporate world. And, well, that's not he may feel that's a nonsense answer, but it is a corporate world. It's about commerce, and the Christmas season is when a lot of businesses make a lot of money.
Yeah, if you look around the world and you look at the various economies, you have socialism on one end, and you have sort of communism. Well, I guess you have communism on the far end, and you have capitalism on the far end, on the other far end, and we're somewhere in the middle. Corporations do dictate a lot of policy in this province and in many places, but Canada is more of a blended economy, and so this wouldn't be, so for something like this is not outside of the Canadian culture, the Canadian way, because we do have government that gets involved in many, many more things that in other countries are businesses, but and we don't mind that because sometimes the government has to step in and carry a service because there's just not enough volume there for anyone to make any money at it.
Well, and that was one of the arguments against Sunday shopping was that you're just going to spread out, whatever money you're going to make over 7 days, and that increases expenses and all of that goes along with it.
Exactly. It's the same argument, actually, why, for example, the Chronicle Herald doesn't publish on Sundays. They claim that, they had a Sunday paper at one point because it competed with the Daily News. But once the Daily News disappeared, they pulled back on that strategy also. And, I don't know the answer to this. This is just a guess, but I'm guessing that the overall pie, once we stretched it out to Sunday shopping, I think it might have blipped up a bit. I don't think it blipped up a lot. I think his argument's a good one. I do think that the revenue spread out over 7 days. I do think the beneficiary, though, of the Sunday opening was families, because I think now, I talked to a friend of mine recently who's been in retail for, believe it or not, 50 years. And Frank says that basically what Sunday shopping has done, he says Saturday has become family day for, for ballet or for, hockey or whatever happens on a Saturday. And he says Sunday is the day that people come into the store where he works and they shop more. He says, so it's actually turned out to be a good thing in his view for families. So you always got to look at all these things from various angles.
Well, and it's interesting that, when I moved to the South Shore in the Bridgewater area, I noticed businesses that would close over the lunch hour, they would close early in the evenings, or they wouldn't be open on weekends. And if you're in a very vibrant, perhaps a retail environment, that seems like such a throwback, such an antiquated way. The guy down the road from me who has a small engine repair shop, they all go on vacation at the same time.
Yeah. Sort of like the Quebec construction industry that it takes the same 2 weeks every year in July. You're right in the fact that I used to do some work before I taught. I worked in the corporate world, and one of my clients actually was the Sheraton Hotel, and in those days the casino was in there. And the general manager, Terry Botten, talked about, people would arrive here on Sundays and there'd be nothing open. And they go, my God, what a backwoods province this is. I'm here with my wallet. I'm off my cruise ship and there's nothing open. And Terry was one of the big, certainly, proponents of trying to get Sunday shopping on the go. And eventually we got it on the go. And I don't think it's been a bad thing. I think it's been a good thing, actually.
Well, and Tony Leonard argues against that. And I won't lie, he gets a lot of pushback. People who say, if you don't want to work Sundays, get a different job.
Yeah, I'm sure he does get a lot of pushback. And you know what? I'm speaking just as a consumer. Yeah. I love having that Sunday because it's usually only Sunday afternoon. A lot of places are only open from 12 to 5. And I just enjoy the convenience of it being there. In fact, for years when I would visit my parents in New Brunswick, I was amazed that New Brunswick would have Sunday shopping long before we ever did. And, people, there's a hue and cry at the time that people would stop going to church and blah, blah. I'm not sure it's had that dramatic and negative effect. I really don't.
And again, to the point that Tony's now making, not about Sunday shopping, but closing early on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve or at 4 o'clock. That's not really early.
No, that's fine. In fact, in my mind, I actually, I doubt I've ever been in a store after 4 o'clock on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, and I doubt most people do. I bet most retailers will tell you that there might be a rush earlier in the day, but by 3 to 4 o'clock, I'll bet they'll tell you that the amount of customers has waned, that there really aren't that many people out there after that time.
Yeah, but for those who are really, really procrastinating, like producer Matt, you have no option.
Then go buy, go buy some gift certificates that you can purchase online and print them.
Thanks, Matt. Ed McHugh is here with us, Nova Scotia Community College business faculty, teaches on campus at several of the universities around as well. Two things I want to just quickly touch on. There was a story the CBC ran talking